The Discovery Ambassador, Zethkar of the Galactic Council, stood frozen before the massive holographic display, his 6 eyes wide with disbelief. The data streams flowing across the projection showed readings that should have been impossible. His chitinous exoskeleton clicked nervously as he processed what he was seeing. "Run the analysis again," he commanded, his translator converting his chittering language into standard galactic common. "There must be an error." The young Altarian technician, her blue skin pale with worry, manipulated the controls with trembling tentacles. "Ambassador, I've run it 17 times. The results remain consistent. Planet designation SOL-3, locally known as Earth, registers a Class 12 Deathworld rating." A collective gasp echoed through the council chambers. Class 12 was theoretical. No known civilization had ever evolved on anything beyond a Class 8 Deathworld, and even those were considered legendary. Most species emerged from Class 1 or Class 2 worlds at most. "That's impossible," wheezed Counselor Vexthorn, his methane-breathing apparatus hissing. "Nothing could survive on such a world, let alone develop intelligence and spaceflight capability." Zethkar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of extreme agitation. 3 months ago, they had detected the first faster-than-light signatures from the Sol system. Standard protocol demanded a full planetary assessment before first contact. What they had found defied everything they thought they knew about life in the universe. "Show me the environmental data," Zethkar ordered. The hologram shifted, displaying Earth in cross-section. Layers of information cascaded around the rotating planet. Atmospheric composition showed a horrifying 21% oxygen content. The technician's voice shook as she read the findings. Atmospheric pressure at sea level, 14.7 pounds per square inch. This creates an environment so corrosive that most metals oxidize rapidly. The oxygen concentration is so high that simple electrical sparks can trigger massive explosions. Counselor Merthak of the Silicon Collective processed this information through his crystalline matrix. His harmonic voice resonated through the chamber. "My people require 0.02% oxygen maximum. At those concentrations, our biological matrices would literally burn." "It gets worse," the technician continued. "The planet's surface is 71% covered by a liquid that's universally corrosive to most known life forms. They call it water. But analysis shows it's not just hydrogen and oxygen. It contains dissolved minerals that create an electrolytic solution." The display zoomed in on Earth's oceans. The assembled representatives watched in horror as the depth measurements appeared. Average depth of these liquid zones is 2.3 miles, with the deepest reaching nearly 7 miles. The pressure at those depths would crush most of our species instantly, but our sensors detect massive life forms moving in these crushing depths. A new counselor, recently admitted from the Andorian sector, raised a gaseous appendage. "Perhaps the inhabitants live only in the safer elevated regions." The technician's expression grew even more grim. "No, counselor. The surface dwellers have actually built cities at or below the liquid level. Many of their largest population centers are positioned directly adjacent to these corrosive liquid masses. Some are even built on unstable ground that moves." She manipulated the display to show seismic activity across Earth's surface. Lines of red energy crisscrossed the planet like a vast web of destruction. The planet's crust is broken into massive moving plates. These tectonic plates constantly shift, causing what the inhabitants term earthquakes and volcanoes. The energy released by a single major earthquake is equivalent to several thousand antimatter explosions. Zethkar's exoskeleton had begun producing stress pheromones. How do they survive such catastrophic events? "They don't just survive them," the technician replied, her voice barely audible. "They predict them, prepare for them, and continue building in the same areas. Our analysis shows they've developed early warning systems and architectural techniques specifically designed to withstand these planet-destroying forces. The hologram now displayed weather patterns. Massive spiral formations spun across entire continents. The atmospheric dynamics generate what they call hurricanes, tornadoes, and thunderstorms. These weather phenomena produce wind speeds exceeding 200 miles per hour and electrical discharges containing billions of volts. A single lightning bolt carries enough energy to power one of our space stations for a full cycle. Counselor Vexthorn's breathing apparatus wheezed more rapidly. Do they seek shelter during these apocalyptic events? Some do, but many deliberately put themselves in proximity to observe and study these phenomena. They have individuals called storm chasers who actively pursue the most dangerous weather formations. The chamber fell silent except for the various breathing apparatus and biological processes of the diverse alien representatives. Each was trying to process the implications of what they were hearing. Zethkar finally spoke. Show us the biological data on the inhabitants themselves. The display shifted to show human physiology. The collective gasps from the assembly were audible even through their various translation systems. The dominant species stands upright on only 2 locomotion appendages, making them incredibly unstable. Their bone density suggests they've adapted to gravitational forces 2.3 times stronger than most inhabited worlds. Their cardiovascular system operates by circulating the corrosive oxygen mixture directly through their tissues. The anatomical display highlighted the human circulatory system in red. But most shocking is their healing capability. When their tissue is damaged, it automatically initiates repair protocols. Broken bones regenerate stronger than before. Damaged organs can often restore full functionality. They can survive losing up to 40% of their blood volume and regenerate it completely within days. Young Counselor Thymus of the Peaceful Garden Worlds spoke in a whisper. They sound like living weapons. The weapons analysis is even more disturbing, the technician continued. They've developed chemical explosive devices using their planet's abundant oxidizing atmosphere. But they don't stop there. They've learned to harness the planet's electrical phenomena, split matter at the atomic level, and even bend space-time itself. The display showed various human technologies: power plants, aircraft, submarines, and space vessels. They travel through their corrosive oceans in metal containers, fly through their turbulent atmosphere in vehicles that would be torn apart on safer worlds. And they've recently achieved faster-than-light travel using principles we're still trying to understand. Zethkar's stress pheromones were now detectable throughout the chamber. How many of these humans are there? Current population estimates suggest approximately 8.1 billion individuals. The number hung in the air like a death sentence. Most civilized worlds had populations in the tens of millions at most. A species that could produce billions of individuals on a death world represented a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "What are their intentions?" asked Merthak, his crystalline form resonating with worry harmonics. The technician accessed another data stream. Long-range communications intercepts suggest they're actively seeking contact with other forms of life. They call this effort SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. They've been broadcasting signals into space for over a century. Are they hostile? Unknown. Our analysis of their historical data shows they're capable of both extreme cooperation and devastating warfare. They've fought conflicts that reshaped entire continents, but they've also worked together to eradicate diseases and explore their solar system. Zethkar made a decision that would echo through galactic history. We need an emergency session of the full council. Every member species must be informed, and we need to decide our approach very carefully. What kind of approach? Asked Vexthorn. These humans have achieved spaceflight despite living on a world that would kill most of us within minutes of exposure. They've adapted to conditions we use as torture methods. They've turned the very forces that should destroy them into tools for advancement. Zethkar paused, looking around at the assembled representatives of dozens of species from across the galaxy. We need to decide whether to welcome them as allies or prepare for the most dangerous species the galaxy has ever encountered. Because if beings can thrive in hell itself, there's no telling what they might be capable of among the stars. The chamber erupted into chaos as representatives began communicating frantically with their homeworlds. The discovery of humanity had just changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about life, survival, and what was possible in the universe. As the emergency sessions began, one thing became clear. The cosmos would never be the same again. Humanity's entry onto the galactic stage wasn't just first contact, it was the emergence of a force that defied every law of survival the galaxy had ever established. First contact protocols. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 6 straight cycles. Representatives from 847 different species filled the vast amphitheater of the Council Nexus. Their various breathing apparatus, translation devices, and life support systems creating a symphony of mechanical sounds that echoed off the crystalline walls. High Chancellor Morden stood at the central podium, her ancient ethereal form flickering between dimensions as stress affected her molecular cohesion. She had presided over the council for 3,000 years and had never faced a situation like this. The question before us, her voice resonated through quantum harmonics that every species could understand, is not whether to make contact with these humans. Our deep space monitoring indicates they're developing faster-than-light communication arrays. Contact is inevitable. The question is how we prepare for what could be the most significant event in galactic history. Councillor Zethkar activated his speaking platform. High Chancellor, after reviewing all available data, my assessment team has reached some disturbing conclusions. The humans haven't just adapted to their death world, they've weaponized it. The amphitheater fell silent. Even the mechanical sounds of life support systems seemed to quiet. Explain, Morden commanded. They've learned to harness their planet's violent weather patterns for energy generation. They capture the electrical fury of thunderstorms and redirect it through vast networks to power their cities. They've built structures that channel the destructive force of their ocean currents and transform it into useful energy. The holographic display activated, showing massive human engineering projects, wind farms stretching across entire plains, hydroelectric dams that contained raging rivers, and geothermal plants that tapped directly into their planet's molten core. But more concerning is how they've adapted these environmental survival strategies into military applications. They've created weapons that mimic their planet's lightning storms, explosive devices that recreate the pressure waves of their earthquakes, and chemical weapons based on their atmosphere's corrosive properties. Dr. Veltara of the Medic Collective, her healing appendages twitching with nervousness, requested permission to speak. My analysis of their biological data reveals something even more significant. These humans don't just survive their death world, they require it. The display shifted to show human biological processes in detail. Their muscle development, bone density, immune system response, and neurological processing speed are all calibrated to function under extreme stress conditions. Remove them from their hostile environment, and they don't become weaker. They become more efficient. Murmurs of concern rippled through the assembly. Their bones are designed to support 2.3 times standard gravity. In our normal environments, they would possess superhuman strength. Their reflexes are evolved to respond to sudden environmental threats, predators, falling rocks, electrical storms. In safer conditions, these reflexes would give them combat advantages we can barely measure. Admiral Crexton of the Defense Consortium's cybernetic implants whirred as he processed this information. Are you suggesting these humans would be physically superior to our species in normal galactic environments? Not suggesting. confirming. But it's worse than physical superiority. Their psychological profile shows they've developed what they call stress addiction. They deliberately seek out challenging, dangerous situations because their neurochemistry has evolved to reward survival under pressure. The implications hung heavy in the chamber. A species that didn't just tolerate danger but actively sought it out represented something unprecedented. Counselor Thymus raised a trembling appendage. Perhaps they would be peaceful. Surely their own survival challenges would make them appreciate safer environments. Zethkar's response shattered that hope. Our cultural analysis suggests otherwise. They have a concept they call extreme sports, recreational activities that deliberately simulate the life-threatening conditions they've evolved to handle. They jump from extreme heights with only fabric to slow their fall. They deliberately expose themselves to sub-zero temperatures for enjoyment, and they engage in physical competitions where injury is not just possible, but expected. The display showed various human extreme sports: skydiving, mountain climbing, deep-sea diving, and motor racing. They've turned survival into entertainment, Zethkar continued. They pay others to create artificial danger for them to overcome. This suggests that in a peaceful galactic environment, they might actively seek out conflict to satisfy their biological need for challenge. High Chancellor Mordun's form flickered more rapidly. What does our xenopsychology department conclude about their intentions? Dr. Paxwell of the Mental Collective stepped forward, his multiple brains visible through his transparent cranium. The humans display a unique psychological trait we've termed adaptive curiosity. They don't just adapt to their environment, they compulsively explore beyond it. They've sent exploration vehicles to every body in their solar system, despite the extreme costs and dangers. They've attempted to land on their moon, a dead, airless rock with no apparent value, not once, but multiple times. They're currently planning missions to their neighboring planet, which our analysis shows is even more hostile than Earth. The psychological profile data showed human space exploration efforts over their recent centuries. Most disturbing is their approach to the unknown. When faced with something new, their typical response isn't caution, it's investigation. They have sayings like, "Curiosity killed the cat," which acknowledge that their investigative nature is dangerous, but they continue to investigate anyway. Their fictional entertainment media is filled with stories about exploring dangerous unknowns, making contact with alien species, and venturing into hostile environments. They fantasize about the exact scenarios we're now facing. Admiral Crexton's mechanical voice cut through the murmurs. How advanced are their military capabilities? The display shifted to show human military technology. The assembled representatives recoiled at what they saw. They've developed nuclear fission and fusion weapons capable of destroying entire regions of their planet. But they've only used these weapons twice in anger, suggesting they understand restraint. However, they maintain arsenals capable of destroying all life on Earth multiple times over. Their conventional weapons are based on principles we consider exotic physics. They've learned to contain and direct chemical explosions with precision that allows individual soldiers to eliminate targets at ranges exceeding several miles. But most concerning is their tactical adaptability. Human military history shows they learn from every conflict and rapidly develop countermeasures to any strategy used against them. They've evolved warfare from simple physical combat to complex strategic operations involving psychological manipulation, economic pressure, and information control. Mordun processed this information through her quantum consciousness. What do our computers predict would happen if we attempted to subjugate or control these humans? The Council's central AI, Nexus Prime, responded with harmonic tones that conveyed mathematical certainty mixed with electronic concern. Probability of successful subjugation, 0.0001%. Human response patterns suggest they would view any attempt at control as an environmental challenge to be overcome. Historical analysis shows that external pressure typically results in rapid technological advancement and increased unity among human populations. Furthermore, their Deathworld conditioning means they're already adapted to scenarios worse than most military campaigns we could mount against them. Economic blockades would be ineffective against a species that regularly survives resource scarcity. Physical intimidation would fail against beings who deliberately engage in dangerous activities for recreation. The mathematical models appeared in the holographic display, showing various conflict scenarios between humanity and galactic forces. In every simulation, the humans either emerged victorious or caused such devastating damage that victory became meaningless. Trade Supervisor Qual then of the Economic Guild asked the question many were thinking. What if we simply avoided contact? We could mark their system as restricted and forbid any approach. Zeth-Kar's response was immediate. Impossible. Our monitoring shows they're actively developing faster-than-light communication and transportation technologies. Current projections suggest they'll achieve interstellar capability within 50 of their years. We can't avoid contact. We can only choose whether it happens on our terms or theirs. Moreover, they're already broadcasting signals that other species will eventually detect. If we don't make contact, someone else will. And if that contact goes badly, we could face a scenario where humans view the entire galaxy as a threat to be neutralized. The chamber erupted into heated discussion as representatives debated in hundreds of languages. Translation systems struggled to keep up with the volume of simultaneous conversations. High Chancellor Mordun restored order with a quantum pulse that briefly phased everyone to the same dimensional frequency. We need a decision. What approach do we take? After moments of silence, Counselor Murthak's crystalline form chimed with a new harmonic frequency. Perhaps we're approaching this incorrectly. We've been analyzing humans as a potential threat. What if we considered them as a potential asset? Explain, Mordun commanded. These humans have solved survival challenges that we've never had to face. They've developed technologies, strategies, and adaptation techniques that could benefit the entire galaxy. Instead of fearing their capabilities, perhaps we should be seeking to learn from them. Zeth-Kar's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. You're suggesting an alliance? I'm suggesting we approach them as equals, seeking mutual benefit rather than as superiors attempting to manage a dangerous species. If they're as adaptable and curious as our analysis suggests, they might be willing to share their survival techniques in exchange for galactic knowledge and technology. The idea sparked new discussions throughout the chamber. For the first time since the discovery of humanity, the conversation focused on opportunity rather than threat. Dr. Veltara offered medical perspective. Human biological adaptations could revolutionize our understanding of survival medicine. Their healing capabilities, stress resistance, and environmental adaptability could help us develop treatments for conditions we've never been able to address. Admiral Crexton added military considerations. Their tactical innovations and survival strategies could be invaluable for our defensive capabilities. If there are other hostile species in unexplored regions of the galaxy, human expertise could be essential. High Chancellor Mordun felt the tide of opinion shifting. Then we're proposing first contact not as monitoring powers observing a developing species, but as galactic neighbors welcoming equals. The vote, when it came, was closer than anyone had expected. 423 species voted to approach humanity as potential allies and equals. 389 voted for continued observation and careful management. 35 abstained. The decision had been made. The galaxy would reach out to humanity not in fear, but in hope. None of them could imagine how completely this decision would transform not just galactic civilization, but the very nature of what life in the universe could become. The galaxy transformed. 6 months after first contact, the Galactic Council Nexus bore little resemblance to its former self. Where once pristine crystalline corridors had hummed with the quiet efficiency of thousands of years of careful civilization, now the walls vibrated with new kinds of energy. Human laughter echoed through chambers that had never heard such sounds. The smell of something called coffee drifted from the new diplomatic quarters, despite the fact that most species couldn't safely consume the acidic brew that humans seemed to require for optimal function. Ambassador Sarah Chen walked through the corridors with the easy confidence that had initially terrified galactic observers. Her simple movement pattern, bipedal locomotion without any stabilizing appendages, still struck many aliens as impossibly precarious, yet she never stumbled. More unsettling to observers was how she seemed to notice everything around her simultaneously, her head turning to acknowledge greetings from dozens of different species as she passed. Behind her walked her aide, Dr. Marcus Webb, carrying what appeared to be a simple briefcase, but which alien sensors had determined contained enough computing power to run several space stations. The humans had been genuinely confused when asked about the device's energy consumption and had explained that it was just a laptop running on something they casually called a battery. They were heading to what had become known as the Solution Summit, an unprecedented gathering where humans were being asked to address challenges that had plagued galactic civilization for millennia. In Conference Chamber Prime, representatives from across the galaxy waited with mixture of anticipation and nervousness. The humans had been part of galactic society for only half a year, yet their impact had been nothing short of revolutionary. High Chancellor Mordun's ethereal form was more stable than it had been in decades. The constant stress that had plagued her for centuries seemed to have diminished since the humans had arrived and begun what they called helping out. "Ambassador Chen," she began as Sarah took her seat at the speaker's platform, "thank you for agreeing to address the Council's long-standing challenges. I understand your people have been analyzing our problems?" Sarah's response would have been casual conversation on Earth. But in the formal council chambers, her relaxed tone created a new kind of diplomatic atmosphere. "We have, Chancellor, and I have to say, we're pretty excited about some of these challenges. They're exactly the kind of problems humans love to solve." Dr. Paxwell of the Mental Collective, his multiple brains processing faster than usual with anticipation, activated his translation matrix. "Ambassador, we're particularly interested in your assessment of the Void Plague outbreak in the Cygnus sector. Our medical science has been unable to develop effective treatments for 300 years. Dr. Webb opened his laptop, still an object of fascination to species whose computers required entire buildings, and accessed their research. "The Void Plague is actually a really interesting problem. Your medical approach has been trying to eliminate the pathogen, but the pathogen is adapting faster than you can develop countermeasures. On Earth, we've dealt with similar scenarios many times. Our approach is usually to work with our biological systems rather than against them. Instead of trying to eliminate the plague, we've developed a treatment that teaches the infected organism's immune system to recognize and contain the pathogen." The medical display showed the human approach. Rather than attacking the disease directly, they had created a biological training program that enabled each species' natural immune response to evolve alongside the pathogen. Dr. Veltara's healing appendages trembled with excitement. "You're using controlled exposure to create adaptive immunity?" "Exactly. But we've also added something your medical science hasn't considered: stress conditioning. The pathogen thrives in stable biological environments, but it can't adapt to hosts whose biological systems are constantly fluctuating due to controlled stress responses. We've designed exercise and environmental protocols that keep the immune system in a state of beneficial stress, not enough to damage the host, but enough to prevent the pathogen from establishing stable infection patterns." The implications rippled through the medical representatives. A treatment approach based on making the patient stronger rather than making the disease weaker was completely contrary to established galactic medicine. Admiral Crexton's cybernetic systems whirred as he processed the next item. What about the neutral zone conflicts? The hegemony war has been stalemated for 800 years. Sarah's response demonstrated the human approach to problem-solving that had begun transforming galactic thinking. We looked at your conflict data, and honestly, you're not really fighting a war. You're performing an elaborate dance that's become more important than actually resolving the underlying issues. Both sides have developed technologies and strategies specifically designed to prolong the conflict rather than win it. Your military-industrial complexes have become dependent on the ongoing state of war for economic stability. She stood and walked to the holographic display, manipulating it with casual ease that still impressed the aliens who struggled with the interface. So we're not proposing military solutions, we're proposing economic ones. Both sides need the resources you're fighting over, right? Instead of fighting for control, we establish shared development protocols. The display showed a human-designed space infrastructure that surrounded the disputed systems with joint development platforms. Each side gets exactly what they need from the resources, but neither side gets exclusive control. The infrastructure is designed so it only functions with cooperation from both parties. Fighting becomes economically counterproductive because it shuts down the resource extraction systems. Admiral Crexton's tactical processors struggled with the concept. You're ending the war by making peace more profitable than conflict? We're ending the war by making the war impossible to sustain while giving both sides more benefits than they were fighting for in the first place. But it was the next challenge that truly demonstrated how fundamentally humans were changing galactic civilization. Counselor Zethkar presented what was considered the galaxy's greatest unsolvable problem. The entropy storms in the galactic core have been expanding for 2 million years. They're regions where space-time itself becomes unstable, making faster-than-light travel impossible and threatening to eventually isolate entire sectors of the galaxy. Every species has accepted that this is simply a natural phenomenon we must work around. Our best scientists believe the storms are an inevitable consequence of galactic aging. Dr. Webb's response was so casual, it initially didn't register as significant. Oh, those aren't natural phenomena. They're artificial. The chamber fell silent. 2 million years of scientific consensus had just been challenged by a species that had been studying the problem for 6 months. The patterns are wrong for natural entropy fluctuation. They're too regular, too precisely positioned. Someone or something is generating them deliberately. The holographic display showed the human analysis of the entropy storms, mathematical models that revealed underlying geometric patterns that galactic scientists had missed for millennia. We think they're ancient defensive systems, possibly left by a civilization that evolved in the galactic core regions. The good news is that if they're artificial, they can be turned off. The challenging news is that whoever built them was dealing with something they considered dangerous enough to isolate the entire galactic core for 2 million years. High Chancellor Morden's form flickered with emotions that had no galactic equivalent. You're suggesting we attempt to investigate the galactic core? Sarah's response embodied everything that made humans simultaneously terrifying and inspiring to galactic civilization. We're suggesting we turn off the defensive systems, explore what's beyond them, and deal with whatever we find there. That's what humans do. We investigate the unknown, we solve the unsolvable, and we handle whatever consequences emerge from our solutions. Your galactic civilization has achieved incredible stability by avoiding dangerous unknowns. Human civilization has achieved incredible capability by confronting them. The chamber erupted into the by now familiar chaos that seemed to follow every human proposal. But this time, the chaos was different. Instead of fear and confusion, there was excitement and anticipation. For the first time in galactic history, there was a species willing to tackle problems that others had declared impossible. Over the following hours, humans presented solutions to dozens of long-standing galactic challenges. Environmental restoration techniques for planets damaged by industrial expansion. Energy generation methods that worked by harnessing dangerous cosmic phenomena rather than avoiding them. Social integration protocols for species with conflicting biological needs. But perhaps most significantly, they proposed something that changed the fundamental nature of galactic civilization: the Exploration Initiative. "Your galaxy is vast," Sarah explained to the assembled representatives, "but your civilization has explored less than 12% of it. You've avoided dangerous regions, unstable systems, and hostile environments. Humans specialize in exactly those kinds of places." The proposal was breathtaking in its scope. Joint human galactic exploration fleets that would venture into the unexplored regions of the galaxy. Humans would provide the survival expertise, adaptive strategies, and problem-solving approaches that made dangerous exploration possible. Galactic species would provide the advanced technologies, scientific knowledge, and cultural frameworks that made exploration meaningful. "We're not just talking about mapping new star systems," Dr. Webb added. "We're talking about discovering new forms of life, new physics, new possibilities that none of us have imagined. Earth is a Class 12 death world, but our surveys suggest there might be Class 15 or even Class 20 environments out there. Imagine what kinds of life might have evolved in conditions even more extreme than ours. Imagine what we might learn from them." The vote to approve the Exploration Initiative was unanimous. For the first time in galactic history, every single member species agreed on a course of action. As the session concluded, High Chancellor Morden addressed the human delegates directly. "Ambassador Chen, when we first discovered your species, many of us feared you would bring chaos to our ordered galaxy." Sarah smiled, a human expression that was still being studied by alien anthropologists trying to understand its social significance. "Chancellor, we didn't bring chaos to your galaxy. We brought possibility. Your civilization achieved stability by avoiding challenges. Human civilization developed strength by overcoming them. Now, together, we can achieve something neither of us could accomplish alone. We can explore the impossible, solve the unsolvable, and discover what lies beyond the edges of known space." 6 months later, the first joint exploration fleet departed for the galactic core. The fleet included human survival specialists working alongside alien scientists, human adaptive engineers collaborating with alien mathematicians, and human explorers partnered with alien philosophers. The mission would take them into regions of space that had been avoided for millions of years. They would confront phenomena that might be actively hostile to all known forms of life. They would face challenges that could destroy them completely. The humans couldn't wait to get started. As the fleet disappeared into faster-than-light space, carrying representatives from dozens of species toward the unknown regions beyond the entropy storms, the galaxy itself seemed to hold its breath. For the first time in galactic history, civilization was expanding not in spite of danger, but because of the courage to face it. The cosmos would never be the same, and perhaps that was exactly what it needed.